Hello and welcome to Dancers Support Mission by Sabine for Shine Your Light. This is a new episode of Dancer to Dancer Words of Wisdom. And this platform was created to meet the person behind the dancer and share with you all not only the highlights of someone's career, but also the challenges behind the scenes. Truly, my wish is to bring healing into the dance world, dancing to heal, healing to dance, one artist at a time and one personal story at a time. I do believe that storytelling gives us an opportunity to learn from another person's experience, and it can shape, strengthen, or challenge our opinions and values. Hopefully, this will allow you to embark or reflect on your own personal healing journey inspired by others' experiences. And of course, if you find those interviews valuable and interesting, please share them with your friends. So today I'm really happy to welcome Rachel Beaujean. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. I know you have a super busy schedule, so we finally managed to find a time that was suitable for both of us. So thank you for being here with me.
You're welcome.
So, I mean, we know each other for a long time.
Yes.
You know, when I joined the company, the Dutch National Ballet, you were already, dancing as a soloist. So this was a long time ago. I will not say dates. But anyway, I would like to know, of course, your little history. So would you like to share with us, how you started dancing, why you started dancing and when? And mostly, my most important question is when you decided that you were going to be a professional dancer.
Yeah. Well, we go way back. I was 4 years old and I was at kindergarten, and they had a beautiful staircase which went, one of those central staircases that went up like this to the first floor. And every Wednesday afternoon, I saw my friends go up there with nice pink things. So I wanted that too. And that's how I started. I didn't know it was ballet, and I was in ballet class, and I was immediately sold. At the time, my mom was invited to the school teacher of the kindergarten for a talk about, which school to go to next. And the teacher said, "Well, we're afraid that your daughter is a very special case. She'll have to go to a special school because she's not really concentrating or focusing or interested. It's like she's in her own little world." So my mother came home crying, went to the ballet teacher the next day and asked how I was doing. And the ballet teacher said, no, totally opposite. She's fully there. She's in the front, picking up exercises like the first one to get them. And I never missed a class. And so that's how it all started. My teacher used to be a dancer at Dutch National Ballet and the Corps de Ballet, and she had an amateur school. So I attended her school until I was 9, and then she said to my parents, she has to be a dancer. Why don't you send her to the conservatory in The Hague? And I wanted to go, but my parents were, she's also, by the time I was good at school, I could go to a better, higher level of middle school. And at the conservatory in the time, they had only very low schooling together with ballet. So anyway, 2 years of nagging them, they finally said, "Oh, go." And I was 11 when I entered the conservatory. And I was very lucky with my teacher, mainly Job Sanders, who had been an international ballet dancer. He was in America because his parents were Jewish, so they fled because of the war. And he came back to Holland and had danced all the big ballets and, famous ballerinas he had partnered. And so he was somebody who gave the school an international aura and a way of dancing, which was also partly American, which was for me very good because it opened my eyes to many different styles in the school. And that together, I say, with Agnes Robles, who was a fantastic character teacher, who stimulated me as a young child, because when you do classical ballet, it's mostly in the beginning very, very static, and you have to go through all the syllabus to become a dancer. But in a character class, she let us improvise. So we could actually dance and let go and be something, like be a flower. I'm just saying a flower now because I don't remember exactly what we had to do. But I love that kind of imagination and trying to express yourself in a different way. So that was very beautiful. But before that, when I decided to become a dancer, I think my earliest experience where I was aware of myself in space dancing was at the amateur school. So this was not where on the big stairs that went up in the kindergarten, but at her own school of Annemarie. And she had this beautiful studio, the light. I remember the light coming into the room. We were all sitting on the floor stretching. And I looked in the mirror and there was beautiful music. And I just thought the awareness of thinking, I'm happy. I'm happy at this moment. I want to do this all the time. So, and I think partly was escapism also, but mostly just this, creating a different hemisphere for yourself. So I think that.
Were you aware that this could be a job actually at that time or not?
No, because I was 6. I think that's when I thought that. I must have been 6. I know that because later she moved to another studio, but I remember this place. No, I didn't know that you could be a professional dancer, but soon after that, I think in school we went with the school to Scapino Ballet, which is also a Dutch company in Rotterdam, still existing. And they did a lot of educational performances for students in the real theater. They did the Carnaval des Animaux on Saint-Saëns with beautiful costumes. And my parents could not afford to go to the ballet. So we went through school, and when I saw that, I realized, oh, if you do what I love most, you can be on stage and you can, I didn't think earn money with it, but it's a thing, it's a thing that you can do. So I think that was when that happened. And so by the time I could go to a professional school, I really wanted it.
So where was that, the conservatory then?
That's in The Hague, and it's still there. And we have 2 really good schools in Holland, which is the Conservatory in The Hague and the National Ballet Academy in Amsterdam, which is linked to the Dutch National Ballet. So we have the Dutch National Ballet School, then we have the junior company, and then the main company. And that's in Amsterdam. But I lived in The Hague, so I went nearby, and it was very convenient. I could go with a tram and come home late and lay in front of the
stay at home,
heater.
right, with your parents.
Sorry?
And stay at
I
home.
could stay at home, yes. So I remember falling asleep in front of the heater at 7 and waking up for dinner and then doing homework after. And yeah, it's not an easy education.
No, it's demanding. Yeah.
Very demanding. Yeah. But very worth it.
Yeah, exactly. But so after the conservatory, what happened?
Well, I was raised in The Hague, and I always went to Netherlands Dance Theater because their performances were at the time, they were on a high point in their history. We had the Hot Theater, but also they performed in their own theater. And so I was more used to that company than Dutch National Ballet. But of course, I saw Dutch National Ballet and I admired everyone and all the principals. I have even 2 scrapbooks where I have all the autographs of the principals that I collected after the performances. But anyway, I was a page in one of the productions of Dutch National Ballet. I must have been 13. And it's funny, there's one film where I'm actually in the same film as was my now-to-be husband already for 40 years, Rob van Boerkom, but he was in that film. I was 13, he's 12 years older. But we have a film where we're both on stage in the same performance. He's doing the waltz. And I was a page to Toer van Schayk, who performed The King. Toer van Schayk, the choreographer and set and stage designer. So, and that was a thrilling experience. That was just wonderful. But I auditioned when I was 17 for Netherlands Dance Theater. And I got hired by Hans Kniel. And my teacher, Joop Sanders, said, if you can, you should try and go to Dutch National Ballet because they have a classical repertoire and everything you learned in school, you can use there. But you can start better there as a student than in a modern company because you can't go back to classical ballet. So since he was always such a good advisor, I followed his advice. And actually, I was injured when it was time to do audition. But Rudi van Dantzig, who was the director at the time, had seen me during my 7 years of end school performances and took me like that. So I joined the company when I was 17, and 47 years later, I'm still here. Yes.
So you mean, let us know, because it hasn't been just dancing, right? Those 47 years. How did it evolve in the end?
Well, I was very lucky to be dancer at the time where we had the 3 Vans as choreographers. So we had Rudi van Dantzig and Toer van Schayk and Hans van Manen. And I became a muse for Hans van Manen. It was so beautiful because I grew out to be very tall. I used to be small in school. They used to call me Puk, for small person. And in 2 years, I grew to what I'm now, which is 176. And so I didn't fit in the role model of a typical classical, easy to handle dancer. But actually, Hans van Manen liked that aspect, the fact that I was equal to the men and also the way I was dancing. And so he created a lot of ballets around that particular asset. And so I could be myself with him. Myself was actually an asset. I didn't have to change anything about myself. So I was very lucky to have met him because I could have a wonderful career. Yeah, and I'm still very much linked to him because I'm the director of the foundation, Hans van Manen Foundation, and his work goes everywhere in the world. He has about 14 productions per year in different companies. So I manage.
Like his daughter as well, right?
Sorry?
You're a bit like his daughter as well.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, you could say that. He was definitely my mentor, and he also that went further than only the studio. So that was also in learning to appreciate art, design, music, food, clothes, jewelry. It's been a whole schooling, and yeah, it was very interesting because he has a lot of artist friends. So we would meet all together at his house and have discussions about art. And so, yeah, he's been very, very important for my development as an artist. And is still looking over my shoulder if I'm creating classical ballet productions as I do now, which is very contradictory to the career that I had as a modern dancer, modern neoclassical dancer with Hans. Of course, I did perform also in the big classics, but
so why would you choose to do that?
Well,
Giselle, because I mean, Giselle, there was already a version for the company.
Yes, well, Giselle didn't go for 12 years during the time I was a dancer. So I danced Myrtha at the very beginning of my career, and then it didn't come back. It was a production of Sir Peter Wright. And the thought behind it, why it didn't sell and why it was not in Holland, in Amsterdam, it wasn't appreciated anymore, is maybe like Sir Peter said himself, if too many ballet masters do their own thing with it, it sort of loses the red thread. And it's very important to have ballet, classical ballet with one continuous line of design, of style, of steps, of, thought.
Yeah, but
And
Beauty worked really well, and it was from him. So,
sorry,
Sleeping Beauty was always a success, and it was from him.
yes, he was very demanding about how it was danced, and it's very particular. And even for our Russian ballerinas who come from St. Petersburg or Bolshoi, they have to adapt. So there's no way you can do your own thing. And I think that is such a beautiful thing, because the principals don't look like guests. They actually are part of the production, and the style of the movement is consistent in each divertisement. So Ted asked me, after I staged the white acts from Swan Lake, if I wanted to do a Giselle, and I was like, oh. Then I thought, I can only do it if I do it with a man who's been inside the production. And so I met Riccardo Bustamante, who had been principal at ABT, and he danced with Carla Fracci and all the big, was a very good partner. And he said yes. And so half a year later, we started. And it's been a successful production since. And actually, my goal has never been to become a choreographer. My goal is to actually make the classical ballet survive our times, which because it's the love of how beautiful classical ballet can be and how touching it can be, also the unison of the corps de ballet and the big everybody working together for one single goal, right? That's so specific in classical ballet, which is what still triggers people, and they come to the theater and they embrace it. They really get something out of it. It lifts them up to another spiritual level in their lives. So because I had that experience as a dancer and as a person watching ballet, I just kind of, out of fear that it's going to be lost somewhere, I tried to make it not lost. So I started to think also with Raimonda, how can we, do these jewels of choreography, which I haven't changed a bit because it's petit pas. How can we make them survive? So Ted Branse, who's our director, he explains it really well. He says what we wanted to do is take these jewels and just put them like beautiful stones and put them in a different, more modern setting of a ring, if you like, so it appeals to the people of today. And with that also comes, rethinking the storyline a little bit. So it's not always the woman who has no agency and the men are deciding over her fate and she dies because she has no will of her own. So all of that comes into that as well, right? You have to revisit it. But yeah, it's actually from fear of loss of this beautiful art form that I thought, if I can contribute a little bit, then I'll be happy.
Do you believe that in 10, 20 years we'll still see classical ballet?
I do. But I think it's very precious and it's very fragile, especially with, the whole woke movement. We have to be careful. We don't want to cancel art in general or history, but we have this obligation, I think, to preserve. In Amsterdam, there's the Rijksmuseum, and they preserve the paintings from centuries ago, and the big Rembrandts are there, and everything is there. And I think we should see ballet as something like that, where we can still show it to the people.
Yeah, of course, I agree, but it's not a
No, it's different than painting, because it's a living art form, in a sense that it's only possible if people, dancers, do it. And if it's not, then you can of course watch it on film, but it's not the same effect as when you're in the audience with a live orchestra and live people dancing in front of you, because it's only that moment that you share together and that you have this connection. And after that, when everybody leaves the theater, it's just a memory, right? So that's why
it's an impression, you know, it's like
yes,
emotionally, mentally, it's all you're being impressed by something.
yes.
And then it's different for everybody that watches, of course, which is the beauty of.
Yeah, and I think what's so incredible is that dancers have such a devotion to this art form. It's almost like a god. It's an abstract thing because it's not a person, right? It's the art form, and they manage to have bodies that completely, you know, they look like Mercedeses, and they're like very tuned and groomed just to be able to do this. They gave up a lot in their lives. Just to be able to do this for this one moment, and then it's gone. So that devotion itself, I think, is very inspirational, and it's beautiful because they take us to a different level, and we can admire and we can join in for a moment, and yeah, it would. I think already only for that reason it will survive, because there's a lot of people who like that aspect. And it's, you don't have to realize it happens, but it does happen.
Yeah, well, I find it funny because you know you compare it to the Rijksmuseum, and then we want to make ballet modern. You know, there's two things that don't go together, and yet we're still trying to do that. You know, I think it's
Well, I think if the Rijksmuseum has an exhibition on slavery, they do give a context to the period where the Dutch, the VOC, was colonizing different parts of the world. So it's not like you can just have that exhibit and not talk about it. But you have to work hard to be able to show it, and you have to put a context around it, why people should see it. So I think we live in a time where we need to reflect on our past, if we want to show the beauty that came out of that period, and especially in ballet in the Romantic era, there was a lot of.
yeah. For me, ballet, the problem mostly is that you know it's to keep it alive on stage, and you know, and this is the big difference between productions that are nice and production that are alive, and it's
Yes.
about you know what you instigate, right? But when you put it together, you know, because as you
Yeah,
said,
I'm not interested in reconstruction, because I've studied a lot, and also the notations of Stefanov, and that came out of Harvard Studio uh,
university.
uh, University. And it's, to me, it's very unclear how people can actually talk about reconstructions, because they're very scarce. Already, it's very hard to read ballet from Laban or Benish notation, because it doesn't always interpret everything, and you still, as a reader, interpret. So actually our best medium is video, because then you really see it and you can copy. So I'm not interested so much in like saying it's historically that's how it was. I'm much more interested in how it has become, and how, for instance, in Mariinsky, this classical production that's basically the same version as some of them, 48, let's say 1948, have been evolving, because the dancers have become better. They've added their own soul to it, and they've shown their own light on it. And then they passed it on to the next generation. And that kind of evolvement, because it is a live profession, it's not something you write down in a book and then put it on a shelf, is only actually, it's like evolution. It's making its contribution each generation. So I'm much more interested in that, keeping that alive, than going back to something that's been written by somebody.
Okay.
So.
That's well, that could be a whole hour on this actually. But
Yeah,
could you tell us what was your biggest challenge? You know, whether as a dancer. I mean, first let's start with as a dancer. What would have been your biggest challenge?
my body, I think, because I was tall in that time. Um, thank God Rudi van Dantzig was also at the same time as Balanchine had liked tall dancers. So there were kind of a lot of us who, I think 9 or 10, if I think about Colleen Davis, Jeanette von der Sar, who we did everything in the company, you know, all the Balanchine ballets and all the, I think my biggest challenge was to keep my body from not getting fat and to say it bluntly, to keep in shape, to be a young woman wanting to experiment with life, you know, like going out and partying and boyfriends and still be totally devote to the art form. I found that very much a struggle. And I think it's, I'm not the only one. I think I'm teaching at the school right now, 5 tangos from Hans van Manen. And I go back to my memory when I was that age and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy I'm not that age anymore because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
So I think that has been also emotionally, you're so emotionally vulnerable at that time because as a dancer you have other people deciding for your career what they like, what taste they have. You know, I was lucky, but for the same instance, Hans would not have been there, or Rudi would not have been there, and my career would have been completely different. So in that sense, as a dancer, you're so dependent on meeting the right people, being in the right place at the right time. And I think that's very hard as a person to deal with because you don't feel like you can hold everything in your hands, you know.
Yeah.
And I think if I'd only known then, I think I think communicating about that feeling, the feelings that you have with the people who are in charge of you is something I could have done more. I didn't do it because I
Always
was.
easy because it's not something that is really taught even, you know, in schools and everything. So, you know, how is your communication now with the dancers? You know, how's it? Because
Well, you
now you experience it from the other side.
know, the side, yes, it's exactly what I find the hardest in our profession is because you have 85 dancers and you're always going to make somebody unhappy, you know, by the decisions that you make. And thank God we're blessed with a very good director who is no hidden agenda, who talks with the team and makes decisions based on listening to everyone, not just himself. So I don't feel alone, but yes, of course, you see things your own way, and sometimes you have to adapt to the vision of the company. And with that, disappointing people is very difficult. And I find that's one of the hardest things being a leader, to deal with that, you know. So the only way I can do this is by staying very true to what I think and trying to do the best that I can so that I can sleep at night, right? And
You sleep at night.
I sleep at night. You know what I mean? That's the ultimate
Yeah.
thing. There's also such a thing which is strange in ballet world. You don't have, in my time, there was no education for becoming a ballet master, or so yeah, I did courses on psychology or management courses, of course. But there's each dancer is a different person with a different history, and yeah, and they're very fragile. I mean, they're very vulnerable. So you have to try and guide them as best as you can. And it's difficult with 85 dancers to do that on a daily basis because there's a lot of different subjects that you have to take into your job into account, you know, planning and schedules and rosters and guests
And deal with your own things because, you know, I think that's the main thing as a when you become a teacher or a ballet master, you have your own luggage, you know, and if
yes.
you don't figure it out, I mean, it's easy to mix up everything as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. Although I find working in the studio has always been my forte. Um, and then I think the same thing happens as when I used to dance. Sometimes somehow like time stands still, everything disappears, and it's only that thing that you share. And the connection that you have then with the dancer is the most purest form of communicating. That is if everybody's in a good mood at that day and, you know, on the same page, which is also not always the case when you have a big corps de ballet. So you have to create that mood together. Yeah.
Yeah, how could that be helped, you think? Because I think I mean, it is an issue everywhere, above all in very big institutions, that there's big machines. Um,
Well, I think um, there's a lot of discussion about time. You know, there's not enough time for this, and there's not enough time for creations. And we struggle with that as a big company. So we're constantly reflecting and thinking maybe we should just, you know, get 3 months out of the year and don't do any performances and just do a creative process, which could be. But then I sometimes also see dancers who are actually fully growing, performing, and not so much in the studio. So for them, it's different, right? They're like stage personalities, and you can rehearse them to bits, but they go out on stage and do something completely different, which is what everybody loves to see, and they're amazing. So, and if they don't perform enough, they can't really evolve there as artists. So it's a constant struggle to balance everything right, like in life, right? The balance, finding the balance is the hardest thing. So yeah, it doesn't that part of trying to find that balance I won't miss when I'm retiring from that particular job in 2 years, because I don't think there's a perfect way. I think this devotion, what I was talking about, if you find that common ground in the studio, it's a beautiful thing. And you can find it even with a big corps de ballet. Because if you make it about the art form and not about your individual problems of that day or what's on your mind, but just extend it to this communal thing, which is ballet, then you have this the best atmosphere, I think.
yeah. Okay. So we're getting to the end of our interview. So I would like to ask you a last question, which is, if you have one advice to give to a young dancer that's starting their career, what would that be?
I think it's what I tell my sons, although they're not dancers, they're 24 and 26, but they're at that age group when if you're brought up very well, you are afraid to just say hello to some people or who are in your power, right? And who are higher than you in rank, or just make conversation or just have yourself be noticed. And I think that's very important nowadays. I actually, if I'm in my position, I like it when the dancers say hello and when they come up to me and just say, you know, a little sentence here and there. I like the personal contact. And I know, for instance, Hans van Manen always says to me, "Oh, they're so arrogant. They never say hello." And I'm like, "No, Hans, they're not arrogant. They're shy. So don't be shy. Try not to be shy. I know it's difficult, but involve yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be long conversations with people, but just have a little moment in the hallway or have a little human contact to even the people highest in your little society, because I think that's what really everybody wants. So, and it will help you be noticed. So that's something I would say.
Okay. All right. Well, on those beautiful words, I want to thank you for this really nice interview. And
Thank you. It's a very nice initiative.
thanks. And I wish you, well, beautiful 2 years, because you said you were going to retire in 2 years. So that's
Of
still,
this job.
yeah, yeah, this job. But I mean, you've been there for a long time. So it's a beautiful career already.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
All the best. Bye bye.